care package incoming. Be secure.
Should have stayed close, man.
Hellstorm awaiting orders.
What is up there everyone, it's the guy with the Game Ethic here, and today I wanted to sort of start a little bit of discussion, and that's about how people play the objective in first person shooter games. Now the reason for this is that actually recently I've been getting back into Black Ops 3. I re-downloaded it now that PS4 has external hard drive support, and I've been getting back into it, and I decided to start completing objective game mode challenges. Now one of those is obviously you have to get wins in all the game modes, and one of those game modes being capture the flag. And I've noticed from playing a fair few games of this mode now, that actually there's quite a lot of different ways that people can play, and either play the objective or play the Slayer role. Now of course, playing the Slayer is a valid tactic in objective game modes. It is very useful to have a good Slayer on your team. If they can pin the enemy team down, or even just distract them, it really gives your team a good chance to get the objectives captured or secured, depending on the game mode. And it can be a very valuable asset to your team, especially if you start getting streaks. That can be unbelievably vital in an overtime round. I can't tell you the amount of games where my team has unfortunately lost to the enemy because they had a good Slayer on their team and they managed to call in really high tiered streaks in overtime and get a very quick capture, which our team was unable to counter. But at the same time, a lot of people get annoyed with Slayers for the simple reason they aren't necessarily contributing to the objectives. Because obviously, even though someone could get 70 kills in a game, if your team loses, then obviously you have not quite contributed enough to the objectives in the game because your team was not able to make use of your slaying power. Now, of course, that is always subjective. It could be down to the fact that actually the rest of your team was also trying to slay, so that meant that no one was actually going for the objectives and hence you weren't able to get those objective captures. But at the same time, you kind of need to read what your team is doing, and that is something that I personally adopt in my personal role as an objective player. Now, the way I personally like to play is I don't generally do try and go for the objectives, but I also try and read what my teammates are doing, because you'd think if you looked at the end of round scoreboard for a lot of my games that actually I'm just a Slayer who doesn't know how to slay. I'm usually in the middle of the scoreboard, positive KD but no captures and maybe a couple of returns. But the reason that I rarely get captures is because quite often when I'm pushing up to objectives, I'm fairly methodical about this. Having played games like Battlefield and Rainbow Six Siege, I know the importance of staying alive and not dying. For the simple reason that in a game mode like Capture the Flag, you've got respawn delay, and if the enemy has taken your flag and you're dead for 5 seconds, they can cover a lot of ground in 5 seconds, and that can almost certainly guarantee them a flag capture if they get a team wipe on you. So of course I'm always quite careful with how I push up. I'm trying to work out where the enemies are, and so I push up reasonably slowly, unless of course my teammate has UAVs or a hater, which will then give me a lot more information, and that will obviously speed up my push. But often by the time I've pushed into the enemy's base, my teammates are usually accompanying me, and so at that point I don't see any reason to justify me fighting over my teammates to go and grab the flag, for the simple fact that everyone wants that free 100 points. But if you all run for the flag and one of you gets the 100 points but then an enemy gets a triple kill on you, you're essentially 200 points down as a team, and it was a completely wasted push. So ultimately I try and work out what my teammates are going to do. If my teammates are sort of hovering around just checking for enemies, then I might go and grab the flag myself. But quite often it will usually be my teammate who grabs the flag. Now from here on, this is where I then focus my objective play, is that I then try and think, where would I come from if I was trying to stop a flag carrier in this position? And so then I look for that line of sight and then I guard the flag carrier in that respect. I then just try and escort the flag carrier back to our base and stop them dying so we can get the flag capture. And that is how I generally play the objective. If the objective is free for me to take, or I'm not going to waste my life by being instantly killed going for the objective, I will go for it. But if it's not advantageous for me to do so, or if I'm in fact not going to be the person who gets the capture in the first place, I take it as my own role to start trying to defend my teammates who are on or around that objective, because that then will hopefully secure it for my team. And I take this role because I think it's as much or maybe even a more important role than actually carrying the flag yourself. Because if your flag carrier gets 3 inches away from your flag but they get instantly killed and then the enemies get the quick return, that's going to be a complete wasted push, and that's going to kind of destroy some of the morale of your team, and it's going to really hurt your further pushes, because then whoever is carrying the flag is going to be thinking, okay, but they were in our base last time, I might not have any cover, and so it could really slow down your team's advances. So I personally take this role when I'm playing objective modes. If the objective's free, I will go for it. But at the same time, I find it much more beneficial for my team for me to sort of wait around the objectives and try and protect them so our teams can actually secure them. Now, the reason I personally don't play the aggressive objective role is the simple fact that I would like to call it bad luck, but I think it's more the fact that my personal skill set doesn't suit that role. Even in deathmatch modes, I'm never that person who's running in and within the first minute has 4 or 5 kills. I usually pick up my kills very slowly. Now, of course, if I keep going, I will eventually get my streaks, but I'm not a very fast slayer, so I don't really go for that role. And I also find, especially with domination, when it comes to pushing the spawns, I try and avoid doing it, for the simple reason that it seems that no matter what is going on, I manage to get screwed over by the spawns. Now, admittedly, a lot of this memory I'm going on is based on Nuketown, and of course, Nuketown spawns are possibly the worst spawns in any first-person shooter game, so this isn't perhaps a fair representation of how spawn flips work. However, I do often find that if I'm sitting in the middle of the map trying to defend the B flag and my teammates start pushing the spawns, the enemies will spawn behind me. I'll be unaware of this because if you haven't got a UAV or a hater, you won't actually know when the spawns are flipped, and that is something that really does screw me over a lot, is that I'm unaware of when the spawns are flipped, and then of course I get shot from behind as the enemies are spawning behind me. If I've tried to push the spawns, I usually just get the timing wrong. I just make some mistake, I go the wrong way on a 50-50 choice, and then it leads to me dying. So quite often I avoid the aggressive role just because it doesn't seem to suit my playstyle. I never seem to succeed on it, and so I try and play a slightly slower and more objective protecting kind of role in objective modes. But if I sometimes find myself getting pushed back because the enemies are aggressive and they are really good at it, I will then switch to a more hard anchoring role. I'll usually switch to a machine gun class which has a launcher, so then I can take out enemy score streaks, but also guard one of the objectives if it's domination, or if it's like capture the flag, I will sort of stay around our base, keep moving around, but trying to stop the enemies taking our flag. Those are the roles I personally like to take, but I want to know how you guys all play the objective. There are a lot of ways you can play the objective in video games. I'm kind of interested to see are any people similar to me, or actually do you have your own way you like to play the objective, because obviously I try and merge different roles together, but of course some of you might have different combinations, and I'm really interested to see how you all deal with objectives. But I do hope you've enjoyed the video. This has been the guy from the gamer tag, and I'll see you on another video.